Speaking of cancel worthy tweets, did you say Jk Rowling's hot take? I didn't see Jk Rowling say anything that seemed like absolutely fucking horrible. She just doesn't seem to be somebody that knows much about like trans issues. That's a really nuanced set of topics to get into, and I wouldn't expect any normal person that doesn't have a ton of engagement with the LGBT community to have like a good take on that. Like, Jesus Christ, to get into are trans women real women? Like, to even begin to broach that topic, we have to get into like forms of like deconstructionism in terms of like how we categorize like topic. Like, that's a really, really, really deep topic to get into. You have to undo a lot of like assumptions in order to have that conversation. Like, holy shit. Look at the tweet she defended. She super downplayed what the woman said. Yeah, I didn't see the original thing that the woman said. I'm not sure. Don't you think she's had enough time to form an opinion about this by now? I mean, kind of. Or maybe, like, it's been so long that, like, it's hard to form a different opinion, right? Like, it's not like if you're in your 50s or 60s, you're all of a sudden going to switch your mind on things. It's not to say that she shouldn't. I'm just saying that, like, oh, this wraps in perfectly with the Sushia thread. If I wanted to have a conversation with somebody about whether or not trans women were women, she's in her 80s? It's a pretty transphobic thing. Okay, this is the conversation. Sometimes I feel like you guys get so lost in the idea that you guys are stuck on the internet. You don't know what normal people like think, okay? If we want to have a conversation about are trans women women, the first thing that you have to start with is, I think before we even get into gender and sex distinction, like, we have to talk about, like, what is a man and what is a woman, and are those categories flexible? The answer is yes. The categories are entirely arbitrary. That in and of itself is a deal breaker for most people. Well, men are what science tells us men are. Well, no, science, no. No biologist discovered a gene that says men are this and women are that, right? People have characteristics. We tend to broadly group them into two buckets. We call one man, we call one woman. These buckets could be anything. We could categorize people by eye color. We could categorize people by hair color, by height, by whether or not they have dicks or vaginas. The dick and vagina one is one that kind of held for the most part. It has some descriptive power behind it. It has a lot of utility, so we tend to use that. But these categories could be anything. You've already lost, like, 80% of like people at this point. Okay, every conservative is completely lost, and half of the fucking liberals are already gone too. You've already lost half the audience. So assuming you have somebody that's even like willing to entertain that idea, okay, oh well, maybe men and women are, arbitrary categories. Okay, cool. Well, now we can talk about gender and sex distinction. This is another thing that people aren't going to follow you on. What if you're born a man? I mean, you're a male, right? The idea that like sex and gender are two separate things, that the gender a person experiences might be different than the biological parts they were born with, that you're going to lose a ton of people there. That's a fight that you have to win. The idea that like trans people are medically recognized by like the APA, or I'm sure other international or other like local national psychology agencies, that's also going to be a product of people's like political narratives, right? Well, are the social sciences all biased towards libcucks, blah, blah, blah? That's another fight you have to win, right? Assuming you get past all of those things, assuming you have somebody to agree that sex and gender are both somewhat arbitrary in terms of how we categorize things, sex and gender are distinct things, that trans people are like medically recognized, then you have to have the argument of, now, what is the social factors behind calling a trans woman instead of a woman, right? What are all of the underlying assumptions? Now you have to get somebody to buy into the idea that, like, because they might agree with all those things that we just said, but they may still believe, okay, sure, but like, I mean, trans women are different than women. It's not the same thing. And even trans people and LGBT advocates would agree. They'd say, well, of course, trans women and women are somewhat separate, but we would call them all women because we want to confer on them all of the social benefits and all of the social recognitions of being a woman, right? Because it helps to ease dysphoria. That's a whole other argument out there. And all of these, every single stage of these arguments are very, 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 very fucking hard. All of these are going to require the person undo, in Jk Rowling's case, like fucking decades of underlying assumptions and shit. Like, it's a really, really deep, difficult argument to have. Holy shit. It is very fucking hard. So like, I mean, I advocate for what I advocate for. I like talking about trans issues, if for no other reason, because it's fun to think about, because it challenges a lot of people's assumptions about what is fair in society when it comes to athletics. What is a man or a woman? What are the differences between men and women? How many of these are biologically versus socially reinforced? Like, this is interesting conversation. There's a lot of material here that can kind of inform us about other views in the world as well, right? Sex and gender roles, athletic events, like how do we treat the different sexes or genders in society? It's interesting conversation topics. But like, for a layman to be brought into this realm and to just instantaneously agree, oh yeah, trans women are women, that's a damn, dude. That's a really fucking hard one for a lot of people to buy. Holy shit. So what's your point? My point is that when you when you take opportunities to ultra dunk on people that haven't gotten to like Super Saiyan woke level 4 to show everybody how insanely fucking like woke you are, it's really fucking cringy. And I think it shows a huge disconnect from what like normal people in the real world think. I think it's not good. I think that's not a good thing. Why are you banning people that don't do that? That don't do what? Problem is that the majority of people engaging in online politics are people who are young, probably in school, and have the time to discuss most of these things. Most people want to work, go home, and watch the game. I think it's asking a lot of people to expect the average person to learn all this shit when they have real-life obligations and their own problems. It's not subjective, it's true. I think it's okay to ask people to learn about it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, especially when it causes harm to people in the real world. I just think you have to, it's a process. Like, yeah, I think so many of you guys' minds would be fucking blown. Jk Rowling has a pretty big platform, so isn't it harmful?
You're not fully understanding the culture of TERFs in the UK. Jk Rowling has been liking and following really vitriolic transphobic people on Twitter for years now.
The problem is that, like, man, dude, you guys in the LGBT community, what you call turfy can feel really extreme at points, because I'm pretty sure right now there's a sizable portion of the trans community that thinks ContraPoints is a literal fucking turf. So, like, I would have to, like, and maybe this is a little bit irresponsible of me, I would have to go in and see, like, the actual fucking tweets or the actual opinions being defended, and maybe I should do that. Maybe we should go and look at this person that Jk Rowling has defended. I looked at a few Jk Rowling tweets yesterday. None of them seemed too bad, but, like, holy shit. Like, you guys go into, like, turfy territory, like, real fucking quick sometimes. I don't know. Oh my god, I think I have to see this movie. It sounds insane, legendarily horrible. It was